Alright guys, so we're back with part 4 here. And we've got some special guests to help take over from here because Mr. Nichols can do this so much better than I can. So without further ado, here you go.
Alright, and they can see me?
Yep, they can totally see you.
Alright, hey, y'all can see me. Alright, hey, good. Alright, we're going to start talking about the election of 1824. In the election of 1824, we were in an era of good feelings and everything because we had finally finished that whole Federalist and Democratic-Republican debate, and everybody that pretty much was running was a Democratic-Republican. Everybody's getting along. Monroe's years were called the era of good feelings, and with the election of 1824, the era of good feelings is going to come to an end and start some serious political strife in our country. At that time, there were 4 people running for president. You had Andrew Jackson. You had John Quincy Adams, the son of John Adams. You also had William Crawford, and you had Henry Clay. We know Henry Clay from being the great compromiser and everything. He fills in several different times, but what he's going to do here more than anything is mess everything up. And so what happens with 4 people running for president, there is Andrew Jackson gets the most votes. But with 4 people running, it is not a majority, depending on how you want to define majority. Majority could be more than anybody else, or majority could be 51%. And when they did the election and Andrew Jackson gets the most votes, he still does not have 51% because of 4 different people running. And we had already found out early on in the history with the 12th Amendment, when we had problems electing the president and vice president, we had set up the 12th Amendment to where if we don't have a majority, they get the House of Representatives gets to decide. And on the ballot, remember, if you remember the 12th Amendment, 1 vote for president, 1 vote for vice president. And so that had fixed that with the 12th Amendment. So with them not having 51%, and the fact that Henry Clay is running, and Henry Clay is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, it ends up going to the House of Representatives for them to decide. This time there are, I don't have my notes in front of me, but there's like 36 times they actually take a vote to see who will be president, and 1 or 2 people would change, but then 1 or 2 people would change, and you'd end up again with a tie. And so after a bunch of times of trying it, all of a sudden, Henry Clay goes to John Quincy Adams. And Henry Clay, who's not got any shot at winning. All right, so back to what I was saying. Henry Clay goes to John Quincy Adams and says, listen, because Henry Clay is going to run for president 5 different times. He is a 5-time loser at getting president. But he goes to John Quincy Adams because he's won an advancement and says, listen, if I can get you the most votes, who do you have for Secretary of State? And so Henry Clay sets it up as being Speaker of the House, where he goes to a bunch of different people in the House and says, we're going to vote one more time. Everybody needs to vote for John Quincy Adams in this situation so that Andrew Jackson will get shafted. And when John Quincy Adams gets president, all of a sudden Henry Clay can be Speaker of the House. And that is exactly what happens is the House of Representatives votes again, and they put in John Quincy Adams. And Andrew Jackson has had an election stolen from him. So Henry Clay, 5 times loser and everything, is able to persuade himself to become the Secretary of State. But the big problem here is Andrew Jackson just had it stolen from him. Andrew Jackson's support comes from the common person, and the common person just realized the election was stolen from them. Andrew Jackson's supporters all pull off. They want to start their own party. We had the Democratic-Republican Party. Because of this, we start what's called the Democratic Party. That's the same Democrats that party that is today. This is where it starts. Lincoln will start the Republican Party, which of you see of today. But they pull off and start their own party, and they start beginning to set up for the next election and everything. And it's going to be a doozy. The election is going to have some serious problems that come up with. And the common man comes up with the slogan, I love this, Adams can write, but Jackson can fight. You gotta love when your political slogan is, we may be illiterate, but we'll knock you in the mouth. And that's pretty much the way Andrew Jackson's party is going to think, and that's pretty much the way Andrew Jackson is going to think. And so when we get to the election of 1828, Andrew Jackson is going to run again. So in the election of 1828, we have two total different ideologies. Adams, John Quincy Adams, who's running again, he wants to create a national bank. Andrew Jackson totally was against the national bank. He felt the national bank only benefited the rich. He wanted a more state-level bank. And I'll be honest, state level is going to help the poor common man on a more level. If I tried to go to a national bank and get a loan, as a farmer, they could care less about me. But if I went to my local Volunteer Federal, they would understand the plight of the farmer. They would understand the man that is local who can pay back just based on his good name. And so Andrew Jackson wants more of a state level things to go on, where Adams is all about national level. When they get to the election of 1828, it is going to be the worst mudslinging in history. This is the point where Andrew Jackson's beloved wife is going to go into depression and die. If you remember what we talked about with Andrew Jackson, there was the mistake of him being married to his wife while she was still married because they thought the man was dead. So this sets up the thing that she was married to somebody who was not her husband. They begin to call her some horrible things in the thing. I hate to use the word, but I'm going to use the historical terms. They constantly referred to her as the whore of Tennessee in the election. And because of this constantly being said about her, she retreats to the Hermitage. She is in depression every day. She is crying. She's miserable. Andrew Jackson is going to win the election, but right after he wins it, she is still had gone through such a horrible depression time, it's going to kill her. And when you understand this, then you're going to understand Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, who loved his wife more than anything in this world, was willing to be in duels for her, was willing to be involved with anything. Once his wife is taken away by politics and by the way that the political parties act, Andrew Jackson is going to show up in Nashville, and he's ready to heads to roll. He's ready to pay back for all the things that were said to him and done to him. Now, the mudslinging isn't just on Adams saying it against Jackson. One of my favorite things of political memorabilia I would love to own a copy of is a brochure, a banner that they were putting out by Andrew Jackson's supporters, to where they were hanging up in small little towns accusing John Quincy Adams of being a Homo sapien. That's right, and we have proof that John Quincy Adams was a Homo sapien. Homo sapien, as you know from your wonderful science teachers, just means a human. But to the people that were living in those small little backwoods areas, when they saw the word Homo sapien, they associated it with, as you understand, and they weren't going to vote for a Homo sapien to be president. So there was tons of mudslinging going on both sides, probably the worst mudslinging in history until to date. But the common man was all about Jackson. So once again, Jackson is able to win the popular vote and the electoral vote.